Can you guess what that means? Couldn't have made anything easy. There she is. If you watched my last wheeling video from Holy Cross, then you might know what this video is going to be about. But for those of you who did not see that, basically what's going on is a couple days ago I went wheeling, ended up breaking a CV axle on the front driver's side, which is normally not a very big deal at all. But when we pulled the front end of the truck apart to get the CV axle swapped out, we noticed that the CV axle had actually snapped off inside of my diff. And being 3 hours in the middle of nowhere on the top of a trail, we weren't going to pull the diff out to, get the little stub shaft popped out and get the CV swapped. So what we did was take an angle grinder, cut the broken CV axle in half, left the outer stub in the wheel hub. That way we didn't have any issues when I was driving home on the highway. And then I just removed the front drive shaft and drove out of the trail in two-wheel drive. What I'm going to do today is pull the diff apart and then get that little tiny chunk of the CV axle out of the diff. It's pretty unfortunate because it's a lot of work for kind of a little repair. But in addition to all of that, a few videos ago, I was working on the front air locker. Basically, my front ARB air locker seal was failing, and so the pump was cycling through a bunch of times and spitting out gear oil. I kind of just have been running with it, and my front locker has been working. It's been puking out a little bit of gear oil, but nothing super crazy, so wasn't really super concerned with it. But since I'm going to be dropping the front diff out today, I have the seal replacement to throw in there somewhere right here in my pile of stuff. It's in this little ARB box. With all of that said, that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. I have to get the truck pulled around, start pulling the front end apart, and then we're going to be doing air locker seal as well as getting that stub shaft out of the diff. Pulling everything apart, got the front diff mounts done. The only thing holding it in now is this bottom one in the cross member, but I just undid the airline. And that right there tells you that the seal is shot because this should not have gear oil in it. So hopefully we can get that fixed. Got the diff pulled, and of course my storage was full, so it stopped recording right before it dropped out, but Callus was able to kind of help me. I just put some wood blocks under the transmission pan and just jacked it up as much as it will go with the bushings in there, so I didn't have to undo the motor mounts or anything, and the diff fell right out. Now I'm gonna get the diff up on this table, start pulling it apart. Okay, got the diff all pulled apart. This is going to be my passenger side. The driver's side is on the bottom, which still has the stub shaft stuck in there. I don't have gloves on right now. So basically, I was gonna show you guys kind of what I'm working with. I have to get in past there, and the metal that is basically blocking you from seeing out the other side of this is the end of my CV axle. So I have to get past this little stub with something narrow enough just to kind of pop it through there and get that C-clip broken free. We'll see if this works. I got two little tent rods that kind of sneak just past what I need it to. and I'm just gonna give it a couple taps and see if I can't get that C-clip to break free. I think that might have done it. Let's flip this over and see if she falls out. Down in there until they stop. You gotta sneak kind of one on each side. Maybe give them another little love tap with the hammer or something. You can kind of hold them like chopsticks. Yeah, a little love tap. Nothing too crazy. There she is. Boom. Fuck yeah, dude. That's the culprit. That's what we were after. So this is just the tip of the inner side of my CV axle that had the C-clamp attached. So had to pull the whole diff and rip the diff apart to get this out. Now that I have this out, I am going to pop out the old locker seal, throw the new one in, get the diff sealed back up. What we're working with is right inside of this side of the diff cover. It's hard to see, but there's two little brown seals in here. And I got the replacements right here, so I'm gonna pop these out, get the new ones in, and throw everything back together. So I just got done throwing the diff back together. I'm gonna finish torquing these down, get it thrown back in the truck, put everything back together, and kind of clean up my mess. And then give it a little while, probably later tonight or tomorrow morning. Fill this guy back up with some diff oil and hook all the locker line and everything like that back up and take it for a spin. Just started looking at this right before I threw it back in the truck, and I noticed when the CV broke, we winched me back maybe 10 feet or so. And the way that it was broken, it clearly hit the axle seal here. So I'm gonna have to run to the parts store, grab a new axle seal, pop this one out, get a new one in there. The next morning, I just got back to the house from getting all the goodies that I need to throw the truck back together. Got me a new CV axle. So one of these is the warranty that I just grabbed. The other one was my spare. And then I took the CV axle that wasn't broken. This is an OEM axle out of the passenger side of the truck. I'm gonna go ahead and put two brand new CV axles back in the truck and then use the OEM for my backup. Grab some new gear oil and then my driver side axle seal. Now I have the truck all thrown back together. Just finished getting the drive shaft thrown in. I'm gonna go spin it around the block a couple times. Everything's sounding normal. Nothing sounds like it's binding up or anything when I'm turning. And the new CVs definitely are making a lot less noise than the old the old OEM ones that I've had in the truck forever. So I am going to stop right in front of my house and pop the air locker on, listen for leaks, make sure that the pump's not cycling through. We're gonna stop right now, throw it in 4-wheel drive, go neutral, 4 low, go back to second, and then compressor. That's good, it stopped. That is not good. So I just tested the locker and the compressor holds air, which is good. That means that nothing has changed in the engine compartment. But when I turned the locker on for it to send air into the locker, it seems to have a leak. Really hoping that it's just the inlet leaking. That's a super easy fix. I can just get some thread tape and throw it on there. So yeah, I'm gonna turn everything back on, hop onto the truck, spray some soap and water on it, and see if I can't find an air leak. It is the next day. After it leaked on me yesterday, I pretty much just gave up. I had no more brain capacity to mess with it. It's not the inlet, it's not any of my airline stuff that's leaking, it's inside the diff. So that tells me that the seal that I put in there is either not seated correctly, the seal's leaking already for some reason, or the seal housing itself is warped or is leaking from the housing. So I have to pull the whole front end apart one more time, drop the diff out, see what's leaking. Not super hyped, but I'm gonna go ahead and get into it. I don't have a ton of daylight. It's like 5:30, gets dark at like 7. So I'm gonna pull the truck apart. I'm probably just gonna time lapse all of it, but I'm gonna get into it, get the front end tore apart, get the diff pulled out once again. So just pulled the diff back apart. You can clearly see that the seal was damaged when I was putting everything back together. So I'm assuming it just caught the bearing or something when I was slapping everything back together. I must have got a little too excited and put everything together a little bit too quickly. It's pretty relieving to find something obviously damaged inside here. I have the 2 old seals that I pulled out. It looks like it's just this top seal that's damaged inside of the diff at the moment. So I'm gonna do my very best to be very careful, put everything back together, and I'm gonna clean everything as best as I possibly can and probably reseal up the diff tonight and just let it hang out. I'm gonna bench test everything on the table once it's all sealed and dried tomorrow after work. Test everything before I throw it back in the truck. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I found damage, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to get them replaced, go from there and see if that fixes the issue. All right, hands are covered in gear oil, didn't have any more rubber gloves. Just finished getting the whole diff put back together. I didn't torque everything down just yet. I was extremely careful putting everything back together, especially this side of the diff, which seats directly over the air locker seals. And I made sure to use the gear oil that I pulled out of the diff to just oil everything up as best I could before I threw it all back together. I'm gonna give it about 45 minutes, an hour, let it start getting set up, and then I'm gonna come back out here, torque everything down, and then let it dry overnight. We'll do a bench test tomorrow and see if those seals survived me putting everything back together. Just got home from work. I'm gonna go ahead, take the air compressor, and give the diff a quick couple tests and see if she's holding air. I had a couple of extra inlets laying around, and this has a little quick push connect on the end of it, which fits right around the tip of my air compressor nozzle. I just did a couple tests, and so far so good. It's kind of hard to do on camera because the bottom of my handle leaks a little bit of air, so it sounds like it's leaking air the whole time. But I'll show you guys what I did. So get this connected. As you can see, this is leaking. But stick the tip in here, purge it, And basically when I'm doing that, when I shoot air into this, what I was doing was listening to the diff breather up here and listening inside of the diff on either end. And it sounds to me like it is holding air inside of the locker seal. It doesn't sound like any of that air is escaping out inside of the diff. That's the result that we want. I'm 90% sure that we're making a good seal in the diff at the moment. Don't want to get ahead of myself or get my hopes up, but based off those couple little tests, it sounds pretty good. So I am going to let the diff hang out for a couple more hours, and then I'll come out here in a little bit and start getting everything thrown back in the truck. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes. I got the diff in the truck. I did not put CV axles in it yet. Didn't get the whole front end thrown together just yet. But the diff is all mounted. I got the air line connected. So I'm gonna hop in the truck right now, turn the compressor on, and then turn the front locker on and see if the pump cycles. I just wanna see if it's holding air before I continue the process of filling it up with gear oil and then throwing CV axles and everything else in, and we'll go from there. All right, so just gonna turn the key on, turn the compressor on. Compressor's holding air, and moment of truth. Turn the compressor on, compressor holds air, cycled it to the air locker. It did not cycle through the pump a bunch of times, which is what we're looking for. It seemed to hold air. When I turn the air locker off, you can hear it disengage and then re-engage when I turn it back on. So the locker is definitely working, and it seems to be holding air. Unfortunately, my little floodlight just died, and I don't really feel like working under there with just my little tripod light. It's the next day. I'm gonna jump back into getting the front end of the truck thrown back together. Don't have a whole lot to do. Throwing CVs in, getting their lower ball joints reconnected, and then throwing the tires back on, fill the diff back up with some gear oil. And once I get some gear oil in there, I'll be able to actually do a real test and see if that locker seal is holding air pressure. Fingers crossed that it's working properly, because I don't think I'm pulling it out for a third time. The locker is engaging, so that's all that really matters at this point. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and jump back into it, get the front end thrown back together, and we'll see where we stand. Got the truck filled back up with some gear oil, drove around the block a couple times, and then just turned the air compressor on and ran the air locker for a little bit. Locker's still engaging just fine. The pump does cycle through a little bit. It kicks on a little more often than I would like it to, but it was not dumping any gear oil out of the diff. So with all that being said, I'm gonna call this project good. The fact that I'm not dumping any gear oil onto the ground or blowing it out of the diff is a win in my book. I've been messing with this thing for days, and to be honest, I'm kind of tired of playing with it. So I have a giant mess in my garage to clean up, as well as all this gear oil that's laying all over my driveway. So while I have a little bit of daylight, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into getting this mess cleaned up. Turn the pump on, which I have already done, so it still has air in there. Turn the locker on. You can see it's holding air. Looks like we finally got the issue taken care of. Just turn the locker off, compressor off. All my tools are all cleaned up. Garage is all sprayed out. Truck's put back together. I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night. I haven't really got to enjoy any time inside of my house this week, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.